All right, welcome back. Continuing from last time. Last time we ended with not being able to inject our environment supplier. So I did get rid of the named annotation throughout, basically everywhere where we were injecting that. And I updated our API application to bind the environment supplier to a type literal. So this is the correct way to do the binding. No need for the named annotation. So I'm not sure where I came up with that. That may have been a different dependency injection framework that I was thinking of where we needed the named annotation. So anyway, this is up and running. Everything's looking good. I went ahead and in a loop over here, ran curl a bunch of times, basically every 5 seconds. So this is the shell command I ran. So I was running curl every 5 seconds in a loop. And I was watching the output over here to see how our configuration updated. And so I do see after 5 minutes from the server start a log message where the background process did update our configuration, or it started to update it. It pulled down the old configuration and the new configuration, saw that there was no change, and so a reload wasn't necessary because they were exactly the same. So everything's working. It's now dynamic configuration, so we can close that out. I will update this code a little bit. We had extra logging in here, so I'll get rid of that log. We don't need this log or this log. So everything seems to be looking good and working well. So let's come back over here. All right, so we're all pushed up. The next thing we'll look at is packaging. So far, we've made it pretty far. We have a server that can run, and we're pretty much at a point where all we have left to do is some optimization with our server, things like add gzip compression, add support for HTTP2, maybe do a little bit of cleanup and some other minor optimization things. So at this point, I want to add support for packaging up our server and preparing to deploy it into a production environment. So usually for packaging, I just use RPMs. I'm going to change it up just a little bit this time. I suspect there are some of you on a Windows environment where maybe packaging with RPMs doesn't make sense, or it's a little bit harder to do. So what I'll do is I'll do it in 2 steps. I'll create a module that bundles everything into a zip file, and then after that I'll come back and do an RPM that takes the zip file and creates an RPM out of it so that we can deploy it in our Linux environment, our Red Hat Enterprise Linux environment, I guess. So let's go ahead and create a new module. We'll call it Tutorial API Zip, or maybe Tutorial API Package Zip or something like that. I guess we'll just call it Tutorial API Zip. So let's do new directory, Tutorial API Zip. Inside here, let's copy a POM from one of our other modules. And we'll change model here to zip. We're going to want one dependency, which is our server dependency. Tutorial API server. I can get rid of these. And let's make sure we actually define Tutorial API server. Okay, we don't actually define it up here. So let's copy this and add that. So that way we don't need to specify a version here. Okay, so to create zip files, we use the Maven Assembly plugin. So let's open this POM back up, jump down to our plugin section, and let's bring this over. So let's search for Maven Assembly, if I can type, plugin. So the most recent one is 330. Let's copy this. We are going to want to do some configuration here. Oh, not dependency. Let me call this plugin. Not sure what happened here. Let me undo that. All right, so now we have our plugin defined. We're going to want some configuration, and we're going to want some executions. So we'll fill these in. Let's go ahead and look up some of the configuration options for this plugin. Maven Assembly plugin. So it's got a few different goals, help and single. So we're going to use the single goal. Let me go ahead and get that part in. So our execution, execution ID, we'll call it assembly, and our goal is single, and the phase we want to run this in is package. All right, so now coming back over here, it talks about descriptors here, so we're definitely going to want to tell the assembly plugin where our descriptors are. We have some directories that the defaults will work fine. Append assembly ID, we'll end up setting this, but I'll leave it off for now, just to show why we want to add this. So here's our descriptors. So we'll want to specify descriptors and formats. So we're going to create a zip, so we'll specify formats as well. We could create basically any of these. And yeah, there's a bunch more options, but I think the three that we've mentioned are good for now. So let's start out with descriptors. So we need to tell our plugin where our assembly.xml file is, which we will use to determine what goes in our zip. I'm just going to call this assembly.xml. Well, maybe I won't. So I think the most common place is source main assembly, assembly.xml. We don't need all these directories necessarily, but I guess since that's the normal place, I'll go ahead and do that as well. So source main assembly. We talked about formats. So we can specify this here in our POM configuration, or we can put it in our assembly XML. I personally prefer doing it here. So we're going to have one format, which is zip. And so this looks good for now. Now I'm not going to, let me copy this. So if I scroll down, so these are all of our that's in the plugin management section. So all these are in plugin management. If I scroll down here, we have the actual plugins. I'm not going to put the assembly plugin here in the list of plugins because we don't want it to run for every single module that we have. We only want it to run in our tutorial API zip module, which currently isn't blue because I haven't added it as a module. I'll do that in a second after I paste this in here. And then strip out this stuff here. Okay, so we've added this plugin to our child module so that we actually get the assembly run when this module is built. So now let's come up here and add zip. Then we'll Maven reload. All right, and over here, we'll do a Maven clean install. All right, looks, we now have our blue box here. It doesn't recognize this directory. I never did add an assembly.xml, so we should expect an error over here once we get down to our zip project or module. I need to fix this warning as well. There's some dependency problem. no dependency information available for this transitive dependency. I'm not adding this as a dependency myself, but something we are using is. So I'll come back and fix that at some point in the future. All right, so here, okay, so something I forgot to do. We didn't change the packaging here, so it's attempting to create a jar. We don't want a jar for this, so I'm going to set the packaging to Palm. Oh, yeah, so here it's complaining that our assembly.xml file doesn't exist. It knew to look there because of the configuration that we specified here. So it looked for this file, it didn't find it, so it gave an error. That file doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and create that new file, assembly.xml. Let's just start with assembly like this. Let me bring this browser back over. So if I scroll up here, like there's a bunch of, yeah, so there's some usage information. So this is Palm updates, Palm. Okay, so everything described here is for Palms. If I scroll down, so I see assembly descriptors here in the advanced topics, and there are some examples. So here in the advanced topics, I see assembly things, including dependency sets. We are going to want to do our dependencies. In fact, let's go ahead and do that first. All right, so dependency sets bring in all of your dependencies that you've defined. So right now we have one dependency defined. Tutorial API server itself has a bunch of dependencies, some transitive, some directly configured in the Tutorial API server Palm. So by specifying this dependency, that means Tutorial API zip is going to run after that one. So that's what puts it at the end of our list here. It's run last. So by specifying dependency sets here, let's go ahead and add an output directory of lib. So now if I run this Maven again, we'll only run this zip model this time. So now it's okay. Assembly is incorrectly configured null. So the assembly ID must be present and non-empty. So something that I didn't copy paste from over here is an ID. Presumably that's in this section. Let me scroll down and see if there are any other examples. There aren't any examples. So let me just make an assumption about what this error means. Assembly ID must be present. Let's stick a assembly ID in there. While that's building, let's come back over here and open some of these examples. Okay, so here's an ID. This also has the XML namespace stuff. I'm not currently using that, but you can see a few examples. So here are files. Here are formats. I mentioned you could put formats either in your assembly XML or in your Palm, and I put the zip format in the Palm. So we're not currently specifying a format. We could specify individual files. In fact, I suspect we're going to end up doing that. So let me go ahead and copy paste this. Looks like our zip did build correctly. So I'm just going to comment this out for now, and we'll come back to files later on. There are also file sets, if I remember. Yeah, here's a file set example. I'll copy this as well. We'll probably use that in the future. Okay, so let's see what happened. So first of all, the file name that was created, we can see in a couple places here. So building zip. So it stuck on this -assembly. So it stuck on this assembly ID onto the end of our zip, which is a little bit annoying. I personally don't like that. So in my Palm configuration for the assembly plugin, there's an append assembly ID. I set that to false. So next time it's not going to have this dash assembly in the file name. Now let's go ahead and look at this. So jar tf will show the contents of a zip file. You can also use unzip -L maybe to list. Okay, there we go. So this is the contents in our zip file. I piped it to sort, but unfortunately that means it's sorted based on this number. Let me change this to jar tf. All right. So now it's actually sorted. You can see that we get this directory at the front. We don't really want that. But other than that, we've got our lib, which is what we specified in our output directory, and then we get all the jars that are dependencies of our tutorial API server. All right, so I can see our tutorial API jars here. Swagger we're using for OpenAPI. SQLite database driver, logback for logging, Jetty as our app server, Jersey for our app server, basically infrastructure, Jakarta things for JaxRS, Jackson for JSON, HK2 for dependency injection, Commons text for HTML, processing. So yeah, and this one's our database connection pulling library, Flyway, for database migrations. So it looks like, just skimming through this, it pulled in all the dependencies we don't want. I don't see any test dependencies in here, which makes sense. We don't want, right, JUnit or Makito in here, and I don't see them. So so that looks good. So other than that, it looks like everything's in here. But I don't like this directory, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. I believe in our assembly, we can specify something like, I forget exactly where this, I think it actually goes up here at the top level. Include base directory. We could probably find that in the Maven documentation here for this plugin. I don't know where it would be, probably in some of these examples somewhere, which I don't see it kind of right off. But let me rerun this and see what happens. So what other things do we want in here? So we've got our lib, which has all our jars. We also want our web directory, which is www. This has our HTML in it. Okay, so it no longer has that dash assembly at the end, so that looks good. Let's jar tf this again. All right, so here we go. We've got everything. It's only in the libdir. We don't have that parent directory. That was annoying. So include base directory, false. Did fix that for us. So we also want this www directory. So to get that, we have a few options. One is we can do another dependency set and then configure it to expand, but we're going to get everything from this tutorial API server if we do that. Let me show you what that example might look like. So unpack true output directory conf includes project.group ID tutorial API server. Hopefully I got that right, kind of just typing it from memory. So this should unpack this tutorial API server, dependency into this conf directory. Maybe. So I'm not sure which one that one was for. We'll ignore that for now. Let's jar tf that again. All right. So now in our conf directory, we got everything from our tutorial API server dependency or module dropped into this conf directory. So it includes certs, right, which are here. It includes the www stuff that we wanted, but it also includes stuff we don't want. We don't want the classes. We don't want this meta stuff. We really only want this www. So while this works for unpacking dependencies, it might give you more than you want depending on how your dependencies are laid out. So I'm going to delete this. And what we really want is a little bit more surgical unpacking of the dependency. So let's come back up here in our zip module. Let's update this to include the dependency plugin. And let's add a new execution in here. So what we're going to use is the dependency plugin to do a dependency extraction. So let's search for Maven dependency plugin. So there are a bunch of goals here, including the unpack goal. Unpack retrieves a list of artifacts from the repository and unpacks them into a defined location. So that's what we're going to use. We can specify the artifact items that we want. See usage for details. So let's go see the usage. Let's look for unpack. So this is example configuration. So I'll copy that. All right, so our execution will be unpack server. Our goals will be the unpack goal. The phase will be package, or maybe prepare package. So that way this will happen before the assembly part. We can add configuration in here, and I'll paste in what I copied. So the dependency that we want to extract is tutorial API server. We want the project.version version. The type is jar. We don't have a classifier. Probably jar is the default, but I'll leave this in here. We do want to overwrite, I guess if it already exists, the output directory. We want to be what, project.build.output directory /server. For includes, we only want to include www star. All right, so we're kind of just guessing at what we want to include. Let's go ahead and build this and see what happens. So in theory, this is going to unpack the tutorial API server jar into this server directory. Project.build.output directory should be inside target here, target classes. Okay, here we go. So now we have a server, and it did include the www directory with our index.html. So now that we've done this surgical extraction of exactly what we want from this dependency, we can come over here to our assembly, and we can use files to pull in. Actually, we can use file sets, and we can pull in the whole directory. If we wanted to pull in an individual file, especially if we wanted to do filtering on it, then we would use files and then specify the file. In this case, we want a whole directory, so I'm going to use a file set. Let me delete that and move it down to here. Do a little bit of formatting. So the directory where the files are going to come from is project.build.output directory. And we actually want server www, and then our output directory is going to be www, we want to include everything, and we don't need to exclude anything. So let's just leave like that. Let me run, oh, so we didn't actually make any changes to our zip file there. We only changed our POM to do the extraction. I'll have to fix this. So I think this is from our dependency sets where we're trying to include the zip POM, which doesn't have any associated files. So I think we can add excludes in here. Project.group ID tutorial API zip. So I think we can do that. All right, let's do the jar again and see what's in our zip. Okay, I see the www and our index.html, which is exactly what we want. So now we're getting basically this directory, but we're getting it after the POM is built. So if there is any templating that happens in here, which currently there aren't, right? But in theory, we could do project.version. So if we build this, if we have filtering enabled, I guess I'm not sure if we do. It looks like we don't. Then it will be filtered. Let's look at, not that bomb. Let's look at one of these I am filtering. It might be this one. Scrolling down to the bottom. Okay, here we go. Here's how we turn on filtering. Let me copy that over to our server POM. All right, so that will perform filtering on all these files, which actually I don't actually want to do. We don't want to do filtering on these binary files. We really only want to do filtering here. I'm just gonna disable this. We don't really care about that. I don't need this version in here for anything. So what we would, if we wanted to do that, we would need to split this into two different directories. Right, like I had, instead of having a single resource in here that pointed to the resources there, I'd copy this block twice. One for source main resources certs, and I'd have that filtering set to false, and then one for source main resources www, and set that one to true. But yeah, no need to do that, I guess. All right, so now we've got our most of our assembly done. It's got our libs in it. It's got www in it. We could add some scripts in here if we needed to, right? Like a start script. We haven't actually created anything like that. But in general, this is pretty much all we need if we're going to deploy this. And then, you know, we could, like we've got our main jar here. So we could use, you know, Java and then set our class path to all these jars, and then invoke our server, tutorial API server class, and it would be able to run using these jars. And then we'd have to create our, you know, our update our server .prod properties file to make sure we pointed at the correct www directory after we extracted this zip, and then everything should work just fine. So yeah, this is definitely along the right track. What I'll do in the next one is take this zip that we've created and turn it into an RPM. RPM gives us a lot more flexibility during the installation process. We can install, we can use like a post-install script to create, you know, user accounts if we need to, or a pre-install script. We can manage, you know, we can deploy a systemd service in Linux so that our application, you know, starts automatically, and we can use system control to manage it, and things like that. Something else I should probably add in here is like a logback configuration. That's one thing we don't have is a configuration directory conf. So I'll add support for that in the next one as well. We do have a logback here. In fact, I just deleted the files. Let's go ahead and add that real quick. So we can say the source is going to be project.build.output directory. What do we have in our output directory? We should have Yeah, there it is in classes. So just logback.xml. We can put it in a conf directory, and we could do filtering here as well. I'll sort these. I guess I'll sort this one too. We don't need these other files, so I'll do one last build to see if we get our logback.xml. This isn't exactly the one we want in our deployed environment. We want one that's more complicated than this, which we haven't really talked about yet since we're not on the server yet. Looks like I botched something. Error adding file. So is this path correct? Tutorial API zip target classes logback.xml. Oh, it's actually looking in target zip, which I didn't actually extract it, so I need to update our Palm here to include, I think this is a comma delimiter, so I can include logback like that. Let's see if this works. Kind of just guessing a little bit. All right, still, let's see if it extracted it. Okay, it did extract it. Now it's in the server directory. So let me update the assembly. And so the source is server, just like this one. All right, final build. So we do have this warning. Let's jar tf, see what's in here. I see our www, and I see our logback and our conf dir. So that's it for this one. In the next one, we'll start implementing the RPM. I'll also look into this problem and see what's causing this. I haven't really thought about that, but we'll get that figured out as well. All right, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.